Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism webinar. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals, and this is our opportunity once a month to connect with one another and also to learn some new skills and techniques about activist self-care and how to practice sustainable activism so that we can all be there for the animals for the long term. And today we're very fortunate to have Chase Avior joining us, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we get started. So Chase, after experiencing extreme burnout, Chase is an activist and filmmaker who took a break from his intense activism to study methods of self-care. Chase continues to empower people to take action for animals while practicing self-care. So now we're fortunate to have Chase with us so that we can learn how to recognize the symptoms and causes of burnout and then how to prevent and reverse it. Chase is very active in the animal rights scene. Many of you probably already know him, but if you don't, I've experienced him in action with Direct Action Everywhere and also in tons of other demos in California. So we're super fortunate to have Chase with us today. Hi, Chase. How you doing?
I'm good, Lisa. Thank you for that intro. I appreciate it. And you do a lot of great work as well with IDA. I really appreciate your hard work.
Aw, my pleasure.
Do you want me to get started here?
Sure. If you'd like to get started, I'll go ahead and pull up your presentation. Would you like to do
Sure,
that?
let's do it. Yeah, please.
Great. Excellent.
And thanks to everybody for joining in. And to preface this real quick, I'd say also make sure that even if you're not feeling symptoms of burnout, keep an eye out for your friends because they might be going through it.
Let me check. Is everybody seeing the screen with vegan burnout and self-care on it?
I don't see it.
You don't see it yet. Okay. Okie dokie. Hold on one sec. Let me just double check and make sure we've got it going.
There we go.
Awesome. One quick thing here. I'm going to make sure my video is off. There we go. Just let me know when you see it.
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect.
All right, here we go. Okay, so Vegan Burnout and Self-Care by Chase Avior. Preface: I have studied psychology extensively, but I'm not a doctor. I'm just an activist on the front lines who has seen a lot of pain and gone through a lot of stress. This presentation is a combination of lessons learned from those experiences and from articles about burnout in Psychology Today. A little bit about my struggle with burnout. So I suffered from burnout for over a year, and it caused me some very serious problems and negatively affected my activism. I was constantly anxious, depressed, and angry, and had trouble communicating. So I took a few months off of activism and studied self-care so I could heal and get back to work. So what is burnout? Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. And in this presentation, we'll take a look first at some of the symptoms of burnout, some of the causes, and steps for reversal and prevention. Okay, so some of the symptoms could be frustration or irritability, anxiety, pessimism, depression, anger. Some more symptoms could be detachment and isolation, difficulty trusting others, feelings of ineffectiveness or lack of accomplishment, fatigue, insomnia, loss of appetite, impaired concentration. And then some causes of burnout could be a lack of community. You could be going through lonely vegan syndrome. I went through that for about 5 years in Albuquerque before I moved to California. Uh, or maybe you have a community, but that community lacks structure, support, or passion. Another cause could be infighting, vegans attacking vegans. Another cause could just be the overwhelming amount of speciesism in our society, or seeing too many images of animal cruelty. You could be having difficulty converting animal eaters into vegans, or you could be having difficulty converting vegans into activists. Some more causes could be financial problems. You could feel overworked or undervalued. You could be having problems with friends, family, or relationships. Could be suffering from poor health or fitness, have addictions or bad habits, maybe be plagued with feelings of guilt. You could have unresolved traumas from the past, or maybe some of us have a chemical imbalance or other medical or psychological issues. And so steps for reversal and prevention. So know that you do have power. So change your environment and your outlook on life. Study the history of other social justice movements to learn what tactics they use to be successful. So watch videos on YouTube about the women's suffrage movement and the civil rights movement, etc. And believe in the power of the animal rights movement because we are unstoppable. And study the ways in which we are growing. You can watch a lot of videos on YouTube about the positive growth that we've been making in this movement. More reversal and prevention, practice self-efficacy. So believe in your abilities, master something small to get a boost of self-confidence. Watch experts and absorb their strength. Practice and improve your skills. And you can cheer yourself up by watching my video Happy Animals on YouTube. It'll make you smile till your face hurts. And some more steps for reversal and prevention can be to find creative outlets such as art, music, writing, hobbies, meditation, exercise. And I would recommend avoid depressing music and listen to cheerful music. And work at a sustainable pace. Maybe try a less intense form of activism for a while. That's what I did. So instead of going to vigils and protests, maybe try outreach or organizing community events or video editing, etc. You could volunteer at an animal sanctuary. You can attend vegan potlucks or host them to make new friends. You can explain your frustrations to someone who cares. And to speak with a vegan therapist from In Defense of Animals, you can call the Animal Activist Helpline at 1-800-705-0425. And increase your diet of positive emotions. So it's okay to feel sad sometimes, but try to have at least a 3-to-1 ratio of positive to negative emotions. And don't feed into negativity. Try to be forgiving and uplifting. View struggle as an opportunity for growth. And go easy on yourself. Get a professional massage. You deserve it. And maybe massage a friend to feel helpful and bring someone joy. And compliment people. And I would say watch comedy. And there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of funny things out there to keep our spirits high. So check that stuff out. More reversal and prevention. You can take a break from activism. It could be one day, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, or even 6 months, whatever you need to get back on track. Decrease your time on social media because it's information overload and stresses out your eyes, especially before you're going to sleep. And spend more time out in nature. All right, and you can remember that not everything can be accomplished today. Some things take time. And in the meantime, eat healthy. Tons of fruits and veggies. Spend time with animals, and get
Yay.
support from joining activist groups like Anonymous for the Voiceless, Direct Action Everywhere, and the Save Movement. And hey, move here to Berkeley, California, and help us take over this town. So we've got a ton of
Yay.
vegan here. We've got a ton of vegan activists here. It's great. And then so the last thing is, and I want everybody to do this along with me. Okay, so lift your eyebrows and smile for 5 seconds straight. All right, lift your eyebrows and smile. So basically, just force yourself to be happy. Damn it. And then. Okay, so share this presentation to help other vegans. And for more videos, you can follow me on Facebook and YouTube. And if you enjoyed this presentation and want to help me become a full-time activist, support my work at patreon.com/Chase Avior. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Got it. And now we can do like a Q&A if everybody wants.
Yeah, that would be great. So thanks so much, Chase, for sharing your insightful tools and information with us, because I think that's really an effective list of things. I've seen lots of different workshops on sustainable activism, and I think that yours, coming from your personal story, is really one of the best, and some of the suggestions that you made are excellent. So what we're going to do now, I'd like to invite everyone to join us, and I'm going to change the format here so that when we're seeing everyone, that we can see Chase as he's answering some of the questions, but we'll also be able to see one another. If you'd like to add your webcam, you're welcome to do that, and you can either ask Chase questions in the chat box if you're online with us, or you can press *4 if you're on the telephone, and that will also open your it will unmute your microphone so that you can ask questions directly. And then
Backwards.
So let's see. I know that we have, let me just double check one other thing. I want to make sure we've got Chase on here, and so we can all see him. Great. And I'm also going to check our chat box, because it looks like there's a question from someone named Sean, and Sean asks, how long have you been doing vegan activism?
I've been vegan for coming up on 9 years, and pretty much as soon as I stopped eating animals, I started talking about it. Back in 2009, I stopped eating animals because I saw a movie called District 9. District 9 is a mainstream science fiction movie that's about aliens who crash land on Earth, and the aliens are, they don't mean us any harm. And they're kind of sick, like they have an illness, and so they're in a state of vulnerability. And the humans in the movie it's about xenophobia, really, like fear of foreigners. And the humans in the movie are just like afraid of the aliens just because they're different, even though the aliens are harmless. And some of the humans want to exploit the aliens to begin to harness their advanced technology that they have. So they start, putting these aliens into ghettos, and it just got me thinking about discrimination in general, but like a lot about racism. But then I was like, well, these aliens stand on two legs, and they're like 6 feet tall, and they look like giant roaches. So they look different than us, and they have a different language. They speak in like clicks. but they've got kids, they've got friends and families that they care about. Their lives matter to them, but that meant nothing to the humans. And it just got me thinking about like racism, but I was like, well, it's not racism because they're not even the same species as us. So I was like, speciesism, and like I didn't really make the connection to animals until the next day when I was eating a steak, and I was just like disgusted, and I felt really bad. I was like, this is the body of somebody who wanted to live as much as I want to live, and I'm discriminating against animals just because they were born into a different group than my group. And so I felt like a racist, and so I stopped. And little did I know that I'd end up here with a megaphone in each hand, But yeah, so I've been doing this for a while. I've had thousands of conversations about animal rights and veganism with people, and I've done a lot of different forms of activism. And um, I mentioned in the presentation that I was a lonely vegan for like 5 years out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, before moving here to California, and that was really hard. That's why I think probably the most important thing you can do for your self-care is to have a good supportive community of people who have the same goals and philosophies.
Thank you so much, Chase. That was a great introduction to your career as an activist. That's awesome. And Sean also said thanks for suggesting the movie and said that was an awesome movie. And thanks for sharing about your story. So just curious if anyone else has questions. If you're on, I know some people have their webinars on. You can unmute yourself by clicking the microphone icon on your the platform that we're on here. If you'd like to share, if you have a question, feel free to just jump right in. Let's see. I noticed Julie's got her webcam up, so I'm going to unmute you in case you want to share, and anyone else who wants to share. If you have any questions. I'm curious if anyone else on here has experienced activist burnout, and if you have, what happened and what your thoughts are. He was starting to chat a little bit. Oh, Liz is asking us if you can tell us a little bit about your current activism and how you stay healthy. I think this question is for Chase.
Okay, sure. So, yeah, so I haven't been going to vigils for a while. I've gone to a lot of the Los Angeles Animal Save vigils, mostly at Farmer John's slaughterhouse, the pig slaughterhouse. Those are really hard because the pigs, they scream really loud and they're very scared and their eyes are very emotive and expressive. So I've been taking a break from that. Also, when you go to a vigil, like it's not just the immediate victims who are suffering, but also your friends who are suffering watching this. And so, when other people are crying, you're more likely to cry. And I'm pretty good at crying, but sometimes, we need to like pace ourselves in how much we cry, I think, because it can be a little bit debilitating, I think. That can be countered by doing other forms of activism that are more focused on, convincing people to stop eating animals and that kind of thing, or by taking breaks from activism. I also have taken a break from disruptions. I've still been going to protests like the DXC protests that are open to the public that are usually outdoors, or we have 150 people here in Berkeley, and we so there's strength in numbers, so it's not quite as intense. Whereas if we do the smaller disruptions where we go inside of like a bacon festival or inside of a restaurant, things like that, where people will be more likely to yell at us or throw things at us or get up in our face, that kind of thing. I've been taking a break from that stuff because it's just high anxiety, high stress situation, and I'm trying to get my nerves to strengthen back up because I felt like my nerves were fried after, I did like 200 protests in 2 years. So either protests or outreach events. So, I mean, on the one end, like I want to say, we need to push ourselves outside of our comfort zones because that's what the animals need, and this no matter how much we're suffering, that's nothing compared to what the animals are going through, and they need us to be strong.
Right.
But the other side of that is that we can push ourselves too hard if we're not equipped for that workload, and then that can burn us out, and then we're not helpful to the animals or ourselves. So it's a nice balance we got to find. So some of the activism that I have been doing, since those were my main forms, I was also organizing for DXE Los Angeles when all this happened. So I stepped down from being an organizer and stopped going to the vigils and the disruptions for a while. And what I've been doing, the first like 3 months of coming out of burnout, I didn't really do any activism at all, not even outreach or anything. I kind of would post stuff on social media every now and then, but took a nice 3 months off, and then eased my way back in. And a lot of the work I've been doing is just fostering a stronger community. So just being a helping hand for friends when they're going through stuff, or just in general making people feel good, is a huge contribution to the animal rights movement, because we're all going through a lot of stress. And so the more smiles and hugs we can pass around, the better. So that's one thing. And then I've been editing a lot of videos. That's not so stressful, unless the videos that you're editing have a lot of animal cruelty images in them.
Graphic.
But uh, but you can kind of steer away from that kind of thing if you need to, and just make happy videos, like that video that I recommended on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Happy Animals. That was a lot of fun. I spent a month pouring through all the funniest, happiest clips of mostly farmed animals, frolicking through fields on sanctuaries, or playing with a ball. I put all these little clips into one half-hour video, so that was just so much fun to make that. And there's a few other things I've been doing. I give trainings, so a training like this about how to prevent burnout. I have another training about how to give a speak out. So, having studied public speaking extensively and studied acting and effective communication, and then having given a lot of speak outs. And for anybody who doesn't know, a speak out is basically where you're on the megaphone during a protest, giving a talk about animal rights, oftentimes to a crowd that doesn't want to hear what you have to say because you're disrupting their shopping experience. But so because I had over the years accumulated a solid base of knowledge regarding how to give a speak out, but I didn't want to actually give a speak out because I needed to cool down. I made a list of all the different options we have for how to give a speak out, and that's like a half-hour presentation. And so I'm training other activists to do what I currently don't feel comfortable doing, and in doing all this, I'm feeling my strength come back over the months. And I'm just, trying to avoid stressful situations in general, and just trying to make things as cool and easygoing as possible. And sometimes that means spending some time alone to gather my thoughts and work on my own little projects without people messing with me. Because, sometimes, like, again, on the one side, having a good community of friends around you to encourage you is super important. But on the other side of that is that, dealing with social circles can be exhausting. It can be a little nerve-wracking, because you got to think about what to say and how to hold down a conversation and stuff. So sometimes you just need to be by yourself for a little bit. But I would say try not to dwell in that hole for too long, because you'll get stuck. And your friends can really help you out of that.
Wow, Chase, those are great suggestions. Excellent. And I love the Happy Animals video idea. I am actually going to recommend that to people who call our support line.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for telling people about it, because those of you who don't know, In Defense of Animals hosts a support line for activists. It's free counseling, and you can call about anything going on in your life, because the idea is that we want to support you in all ways so that you can continue this amazing work for the animals. And I like all the suggestions that you've given, Chase. I want to also read a couple of things that are in the chat box here, because I think they're really relate to our conversation here. So Sean was saying that that the vigils can be heartbreaking, and Liz also said that the vigils may be extremely difficult and that eliminating them can help with self-care, that she has struggles to even watch the videos themselves, and really likes the steps that you shared. Sean suggested, what about, AV, doing more AV, which is that anonymous for the voiceless.
Yeah.
And you may want to describe that for people who don't know what it is.
Yeah, I can do that real quick.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so that's a great option is to do outreach instead of disruptions and vigils, for a while at least, until you get your feet back under you. Because like going to vigils and broadcasting what's happening to the animals is super important. It's a great form of activism, and same with disruptions. That's like really crucial to a social justice movement. But you don't have to be the person leading the protest every time. You can either hang in the back, or you can just pass that one up. There's still going to be plenty of people to go out there. But yeah, Anonymous for the Voiceless does the Cube of Truth demonstrations, where we go out and hold a laptop showing slaughterhouse videos to the public, and there'll be some outreach people to engage them in conversation after they've watched the video for a minute. And so that's a great form of beginner activism that's really not stressful at all. Is you go and you stand in the cube holding a laptop, and you're wearing a mask even, so that they're not focusing on your eye contact or anything like that. They're focusing on the screen that you're holding, and so that's easy. You just stand there, but you're helping the cause a lot, and somebody else can do the talking for you. Or if if you feel like you've had a lot of conversations about animal rights, you know how to talk about this stuff, and then you can go ahead and do outreach where you're talking to people as they watch the video. Now, sometimes that, though, can be a little frustrating sometimes because sometimes the audience is really receptive when they're watching that video because they're like, oh man, this is obviously messed up. But sometimes they might want to try to find a way around it where they can get humane meat or whatever, cage-free eggs and stuff like this. And they might still be receptive to you explaining why those actually aren't ethical practices. But it's still kind of this back and forth where you have to have a little bit of stress of dealing with the same stupid questions over and over. And they're not stupid questions, because a lot of times people, they just haven't thought about this issue, so it's the first time they're wrestling with it, and so we want to be patient and understanding of that. But it can be a little tedious for us, and sometimes some people will just be hecklers and just trying to give you a hard time, and it's good to distance yourself from situations like that, or at least be ready for them. And don't let them bring you down. Like I said, don't feed into the negativity, and people can change. That's another thing. I used to make fun of vegans. So, people can change. And
Yeah.
for the people who, and I'll say this, for the people who aren't going to change, like there's people I've been trying to work on, like friends and family, for 8 years, and they're not changing. So I'm not really holding out hope for those folks. We as a collective animal rights movement are going to force them to change we're going to change the laws. We're going to change the social norms, and we're going to make speciesism just as socially unacceptable as racism or sexism, so that people can't feel so comfortable making those bacon jokes, if you know what I mean.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and also Liz wanted to say thank you, Chase, for your service, and thank you for stepping back to care for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Well, I'll say one thing real quick
Sure.
too, is that I didn't even realize that I was in burnout while it was happening. I was just a ball of frustration and lashing out at people left and right, and just not focusing or thinking clearly ever, while I was in that state. Now I'm more to the point where every now and then I freak out, but for the most part I'm pretty even keeled. And sometimes when you're in burnout, or if you have a friend who's going through it, it can be really hard to come out of that, and you can be in denial that it's happening, and you don't want to take a break because your goal is to liberate the animals, right? And so you might feel like I know I felt like if I stopped going to the disruptions, I would be letting the animals down and letting down the movement, and that I wouldn't be fulfilling any purpose in life, and that made me feel really inept and just without purpose. But there's lots of ways to help, and some of the least stressful ways are the way to go at certain times in our lives. As an think about it long term.
I think also your strategy of training other activists is an excellent one, because it really does exponentially grow the movement and also gives you an opportunity to take the break that you need. And we have another question too.
Okay, what you got?
Question is from Diane. She says, do you feel that the disruptions are actually effective, or is it possible that they may just alienate people who may be more amenable to the message in a gentler way, and is wondering if people may just get defensive when being confronted so directly? What do you think?
Sure. So that's a bit of another topic, but I love talking about it, and I can summarize it pretty quick. So take a look at like Rosa Parks, for example. Okay, Rosa Parks, when she sat in a whites only section of a bus, she made a lot of people angry. She disrupted the status quo. She did what she wasn't supposed to do, and she pissed off a lot of racists. But that's okay, because the racists aren't our primary target, right? Our primary target are people who are more on our side already, but who just haven't taken action. So while Rosa Parks was pissing off racists, she was also emboldening people who were already on her side to take a stronger stance, and she was emboldening people who were kind of on the fence about the issue to pick one side or the other. And it's the same thing with every social justice movement. Again, with like women's suffrage, those ladies near rioted, and I'm not advocating riots, but I'm saying they took direct action. They took civil disobedience to break unjust laws and to make people uncomfortable in their oppression. So like the efficacy of disruption has been established through social science and the history of these other movements, and we've seen it as effective in our own movement as well, in mobilizing vegans to become activists, because then once we have, there's strength in numbers. So if you imagine a protest of 5 people versus a protest of 5,000 or 5 million, which do you think is going to have a stronger impact on society? When people start to see that there's a huge community of activists, of people who care about animals, who care about truth and justice, and who are not afraid to speak this truth and to not beg people to go vegan, but to demand animal liberation now, then that's when, for one, it conveys the severity of the situation. Because, like, if we shrug it off like it's not that big a deal, like, oh, maybe just try meatless Mondays, or, whatever works for you, then people don't realize how serious it is. And we're I feel like it's doing the animals a disservice by saying their ordeal is not so serious that we need to take serious action. Another thing is that, some people will respond negatively at first because it is controversial. It is disrupting their lunch or whatever. But for one, they should not be having a peaceful, calm lunch while they're dining on the murdered bodies of the innocent, right? Somebody should be saying something about that. If it was a dog on their plate, I bet a lot more people would be speaking out against it. Even non-vegans would speak out and say, no, what are you doing? You can't be eating dog here, right? But there's no difference. And so, and also, another thing is, if we think that we should protest for human rights, but not for animal rights, is that speciesist? But I'll say that people might react negatively at first, but then when they go home and they pet their dog, and they relax, they calm down, and they have time, they sleep on it maybe, they have time to reflect on what we said, they're going to have more trouble living in denial, because we're starting to plant seeds. And they might go talk about, our protests are so dramatic that they're like forced to go talk about the instance to their friends and coworkers and everything. And sometimes Sometimes it's positive, like, oh, you should have seen these vegans. They came in and they were saying a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking. And they really emboldened me to quit eating animals and to start speaking up. Or the audience, they might throw a piece of bacon at us and yell, get in our face, and then go home and talk smack about us to their friends. Oh, you should have seen these stupid vegans came in but you know what? The friend that they're talking to might say to them, I don't know, man. I just saw a video of a slaughterhouse on Facebook, and it's pretty messed up. Like, and why don't we eat dogs? Like, what is the difference? And so it provokes a dialogue, and anger can be a great motivator. It's not the only activism that I use, but it's one of the most effective. So yeah, and if you want to learn more about the power of protests and the efficacy of civil disobedience and nonviolent direct action and disruption, I would say go to YouTube and type in The Science of Social Change by Wayne Shung of Direct Action Everywhere, and that'll explain it in more detail.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that, and at the same time balancing it with this idea of we do this activism and take care of ourselves and avoid stressful situations. I think that idea of having a balance is really key, and knowing that all of it's necessary.
Yeah, definitely. And let me say one last thing about disruptions, is that so like right now when we walk into these grocery stores and restaurants, we walk in there and everybody nobody says a word. Nobody says a word about the animal cruelty that's lining the shelves and filling the plates. And so we're walking around acting as if nothing's wrong. And non-vegans walk in there, and that mentality of there's nothing wrong here is perpetuated by our silence. All right, so education is crucial, like when people aren't feasting on the bodies, but disrupting this speciesism is crucial. So we're creating a new norm instead of a social norm of silence while there's so much violence around. We're creating a new norm of standing up and speaking out on behalf of the victims. And the more that happens, the more people will see the times are changing, and the more they'll be, or the less they'll be able to avoid the truth.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Strong statement, and it's good to hear it. So another statement coming from Sean, who's just saying that every form of activism is important, even just little things like putting up vegan stickers. They're sharing that they always put vegan cookbooks in front of Carnus cookbooks at the bookstore. So little minor
Cool.
mini disruptions, I guess we could call them, not minor, but mini, very effective. So just putting things in people's way so that they begin to notice. And even another person, Ray Sikora, who's an activist who's been around for many years in the movement, and she wears a vegan t-shirt, and that's her form of activism that she does among other things, but she says that's one of the most effective ones. People ask her all the time about it when she's on the airplane, wherever she is. So yeah, it looks like there's a reference. Looks like Sean added, we've got Julie showing her kitty. It's so cool. And hey, sorry, I can unmute you there. And Sean has shared the YouTube video. Is that the video from Chase of the happy, or it's for Liz? Is that the happy animals video? Oh, it's the book that you mentioned, Wayne's video. Excellent. Thank you so much. So now we have a link in the chat box to Wayne's video. So we can
Fantastic. Yeah, The Science of Social Change. So that's like a half-hour speech that Wayne gave at the 2014 Animal Rights National Conference, and that's just phenomenal.
Okay, excellent. I'm just putting in the title, Science of Social Change. So that's all there. And anyone who's with us and who is on the webinar portion, you can copy, just use the copy-paste function in your computer to copy the anything in the chat box. Once we end the webinar, it will not be available any longer. So I just wanted to let you know that. And for those people who are on the phone with us, it is The Science of Social Change, and that's something that you can access on YouTube. It's a kind of complicated link, but if you put that title in the YouTube search box, you will probably find it.
Yeah, another thing that's great about disruption is that it helps to get the word out to a larger audience. So like for one, if I were to speak for 30 seconds or a minute about animal rights to one person, I could say the same thing for 30 seconds or a minute to a room full of people. And so in that same amount of time, one person versus, 100 people. And also, though, when you disrupt a business like that, or a festival, or a political event, or something, it gets on the news, and that can reach thousands, millions of people, and that's something that DXE is really good at.
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons to go ahead and do these disruptions, it sounds like, from what you're sharing, and also just the economy of it all, to be able to speak with more than one person, and so that your words can go farther. So all of that is, yeah.
I'll say also, I used to be terrified of public speaking, so like this didn't really come naturally to me, but I just forced myself. I took acting classes and public speaking classes so that I could get my message out, because I knew it was something that needed to be heard regardless of my discomfort.
Those are great techniques. And also there is a speaking, what is it called? It's the... we have a group in LA that's specifically focused for people who want to do public speaking with animals, and it's part of a larger group.
Toastmasters.
Yes, thank you, Chase. It's Toastmasters.
Yeah, so you can look, if you're in Los Angeles, you can look up Vegan Toastmasters, and you can practice speeches in front of other people who are practicing speeches in front of you.
Yes, and if you're not in Los Angeles, you can still join the Toastmasters group, and you can share your vegan speeches. People will learn even about it just from your speech. That's another great tool. Wonderful. Now, let's see if there's any other questions. If anyone who's with us wants to ask another question, either on the phone or in the chat box, feel free to do that. And leave a moment for people to do that. I know Julie's with us. We've got her video. That's so great. If anybody has any other questions, and if not, then what we'll do is we'll end our webinar for this time. But I definitely want to take a moment and thank Chase so much for sharing, because I think your presentation was very valuable, and your talking with us was also so important, because I think we got some of the anecdotal experiences that you were sharing, and your strategies for what to do and how to adjust your activism, even if it's temporary. And I think it's important, something that you mentioned about not shaming oneself. Mm-hmm. Just if we're not going to the vigil that time, not to shame ourselves, to really be kind to ourselves and know that all of the activism is important, and there's a time for each in our lives. Yeah.
Great.
Oh.
Hi, Lisa.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris. Did you have a question?
Well, I had something to say. It's like I was thinking about, just because you might feel like you're the only vegan activist in the room or something. That doesn't mean that you're the only one in the world. There's probably 1 billion of them somewhere else in the area or some in the world, and there is 1 billion of them in the world. But, just because you're the only one in there, that doesn't mean that you're the only one at all.
That's a great point. And it's hard to remember that sometimes. So if you can, find at least one other person to be your animal rights buddy, so you can be like a dynamic duo at least. Or try to either build a community in your town or move somewhere else where there is a big community like that. I love living here in Berkeley. Los Angeles is another good spot too. But yeah, I've got hundreds of vegan activist friends within like walking distance. It's so great here, and we have the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. So, but you're right. Even if you are by yourself, remember that we're out here fighting hard, right alongside you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for your question, and also Chase for continuing to encourage all of us, no matter where we are, if we're in a small town with one vegan, or if we're in a large city with many, many vegans, it's important to recognize that we're all together. And that's part of the power of being on this webinar, is to know that, we're not alone. We're all together here. So I want to thank you so, so much for sharing your expertise with us today, Chase. You're certainly have become an expert on self-care, and that's because of your personal experience, which is super valuable.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, learn from my many mistakes.
Oh, well, that's how we can function together as a community, is that we all learn from each other's mistakes, and that's how we can put together some really effective tools, not just for activism, but also for the self-care piece of activism, which enables us to continue being part of the movement for the long haul. And so, and really, I'm just full of gratitude for you, for your work, and also for your self-care presentations that you're doing, so that we can all benefit from your learnings. It's really wonderful.
Well, my pleasure. And thanks to everybody for tuning in and for all the hard work you're all doing. And just keep your head up. We got this.
Woohoo! That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Chase. And for everyone who's joined us, if you're on the webinar, you'll get a replay link coming hopefully tomorrow, and then you can share this with your friends. That would be a great way to spread the word. So thanks to everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Chase.
Oh,
Bye.
you're welcome. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
Good night. Thanks.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you.